Hey everybody, welcome to Fit Tip Tuesday. Today I want to talk about asymmetry in pants fitting. And asymmetry means the right and left side of your body are not the same measurement or shape. It can also mean that you have a curve in your spine, like scoliosis, and so it causes different curvature on one side versus the other side. And I want to just do a quick little tutorial on how I think it's best to address these issues. Now, the first thing I want to say is if your asymmetry is a half an inch or less, my recommendation is to fit on the larger side or the higher side and then see if it's noticeable. So see if when you make your two-leg muslin, if the shorter or smaller side needs to be taken in slightly. A lot of times if you have a small difference left to right, you can adjust that in your fashion fabric when you're putting the fine-tuning fit on your pants that you're working with. But if you have more than a half an inch difference, then things become more noticeable, and sometimes you do have to make a right and left leg so you can address the, so you can address how it's going, you can address these asymmetrical things, and then make both sides fit properly. Now I'm going to break this down into two different sections or two different kinds of asymmetry. The first thing I'm going to talk about is if you have a higher hip or a wider side, not caused by a curvature of your spine. So sometimes you're just born with one side being a little longer or shorter, or heavier or lighter, and you have a perfectly fine and straight back, and it's not being caused by the curve there. That is going to be something that you can adjust for at the area you need it. So let me just show you some things here. I drew this little illustration to share with you. You can see my blue ink is running low, so it looks like we have striped pants here. But basically, I just wanted to show you, if you have a high hip or a wider side, I'm going to show you how to adjust that where you need it. So let me just move this over here now. And let's work with one set of pants, and then I'm gonna use the other one to show you the other stuff later. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my ruler, and I'm just gonna finish this front pocket area, because if I do that, then we don't have any, we can put the front pocket back on after we adjust. But basically, here we have a front and back leg, okay? And let's say our situation is we have a high hip that's more than a half an inch higher than the other hip. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to make a copy of your pants pattern legs and pieces, because if you're adjusting for right and left side differences, you're going to need two sets of legs. So let's pretend this set of legs is going to fit my higher hip. I'm just going to cut some extra paper here so I can get a little closer. All right, so what we're going to do here is I am going to, let's start in the back. I'm going to draw myself a little guideline, and this could be, let's say, maybe 3 or 4 inches down from the waistline, and then I'm going to make it about 4 or 5 inches to the waist like this. So what we're going to do here is, if we have to raise the hip on one side of our pants pattern, I'm literally going to cut this out. Okay, I'm going to use my pink Post-it notes for this. So I'm literally going to stick a pink note under here. And we're going to decide, how much is it that we need to raise the side seam on the side where the hip is higher. So let's pretend it's like a 3/4 of an inch. So for this sample, I'm just going to measure half that because it's a small half scale pattern. But let's say that's the amount we want to lengthen our side seam to accommodate the higher hip. So what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to just tape it back together, slide it up and tape it back together like this. Okay, so I'm just going to take my ruler and I'm literally going to join those up like this. So my original center back and my original side seam, and you can see now what I've done here is I've added the length we need along the side seam for a higher hip. Now obviously if I do that to the back, I have to do the exact same thing to the front, and I'm going to draw a box around my pocket so I don't, you know, change the shape of the front pocket opening. I'm going to cut that off. And I'm going to add some pink paper. I think I can share the paper from this one. Okay, so I'll stick this pink paper under here. And again, we want to make a like adjustment, right? Because if we adjust the back, the 1/2 inch, or I mean the 3/4 of an inch, we want to make sure we're adding the same amount of length to the front side seam as we did the back. I'm just going to make my guideline. And then I am going to reattach that and tape it in place. Okay, so you'll notice here I have isolated where we made the adjustment to where the body needed it. Okay, so I didn't like lengthen the hem, for example, on the side that had the higher hip. I went right to where the issue was and I addressed it right where it needed more length. So you can see here we've added more length, and that's how you can adjust for a high hip if you don't have a curvature of your spine. Now the other thing that can happen is, if we look at this, it doesn't always happen, and sometimes it happens separately from a high hip. You can also have a wider leg. So sometimes when you have a high hip, it may also be wider, but sometimes you may just have a wider leg. So if your leg is wider on one side, the way you're going to deal with that is you're literally going to draw yourself a guideline close to the side seam on the side that's wider, like this. And I'm just going to draw, we'll do this one in pink. We're just going to draw ourselves a guideline like this. Then, and let me do both at the same time. So here's my front and my back. All right, and then I'm going to cut these on here. And what I'm going to do is stick a piece of paper there. My Post-it notes aren't big enough for a big long slash like this, so I'm just going to use my white paper, but we'll fill it in. So I'm basically going to spread the pattern the amount I need. So let's say we needed to add, I don't know, a 1/2 inch. Just going to draw myself a guide. And then I'm going to tape that back into position. And I want to make sure my hem and my horizontal guidelines still line up. So like my knee still matches and my hem still matches. So I'm going to just tape this down. All right, so you can see that now I've added to make the leg wider. And depending on what's going on, this doesn't necessarily mean the front and the back is wider, but it could. So if you have to make a wider leg, measure from your center front to your side seam across like your full hip and your waist to see what you need to add, but then also measure from the center back to the side seam and see what you need to add. So it may not be that you need to add the same amount. I'm just going to hash this so you can see we've added this here, and then I'm going to just add a similar amount to the front, but remember, it may not be exactly the same. Let's say in the front, we just need to add a little bit. Let's say my front is only a little bit bigger. So let me just tape this in a couple places so it stays nice. Okay, so let's say in the front it's just, I don't know, let's say it's just a little bit less than the back. And it could be a little more, it could be a little less, but I would measure from center front back to the side seam to determine what it is that you need to change. And doing it this way eliminates the need to have to redraw your side seam edges. And I'm finding when I'm working with students, it's easier for them to just slash and spread versus trying to redraw. So that's why we're adjusting within the pattern. All right, so here's my wider leg. And a higher hip. Okay, so again, I'm just gonna do. So this is what we added. We know the side seams match because we didn't change that. We just added to make the leg wider. Now, if you have a curvature of your spine, like scoliosis, then you may end up with these same issues. So sometimes scoliosis will cause one hip to be higher. It could cause other different shape changes. It could also cause your side seams to twist. So I want to show you how to deal with that, and it's going to look a little bit different than this. So let's take a look at this. So if we look at the side view of a left and right side view, you can see here that sometimes it will cause your side seams to twist. So literally on one side, the side seam will be to the back, in the back, and on the other side it'll be in the front. So you can see here on the left side, the side seam is pulling to the back, and over here you see it's pulling to the front from the opposite side seam. So to make these adjustments, we're going to raise the hip, but we're also going to let it out as well. So instead of just working in this area at the side seam where it shows from the front view, because having these twisted seams are visible from the side seam or from the side view, but then when you look at your front and back, you still have that higher hip asymmetry. What you're going to do is on the side that you need that's twisting because you need more room, so in this case on the back leg where the garment was twisting and the side seam was in the back, what we're going to do is we're going to add ease here and we're going to take it away from the front. But I'm not going to do it like I did it to make the leg wider. So you can see right here, all I did was make that wider. We're not going to do it like that because when a body twists, the whole body is twisting. So the way I'm going to address this is I'm actually going to draw myself a guideline from the inseam all the way up to the tip of the, up to the top of the side seam. But then I'm also going to make a second slash, and I think I'm just going to slash from here to the knee, like this. Somewhere in the middle of the first slash. So let's just do it like this. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to also slash through this diagonal like this. Okay, we've got two things going on. I'm going to deal with the twisting side seam first, and then I'm going to raise the hip the amount we need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spread this diagonal the amount I need to push out my side seam. So you notice I'm not just adding it down the entire pattern, I'm adding it to the from the knee, and I have to make a pivot here. Okay, and you can kind of look at your side seam and see how far down it's twisting. So like, let's say it's twisting all the way to the hem, you can make this diagonal line go all the way to the hem. So just look in your side view mirror and see how far down the curvature of your spine is causing the side seam to twist, and pick that end point. So for this one I'm doing the knee, but it could be farther down. If it's twisting all the way from the hem, you can go ahead and put your pivot point down there, all the way down there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to lift this, or open this, the amount that I need to add to the side seam up here to get it to be straight. So you measure here and it will push it out that much there. Okay, so I'll just put my little pink note under here. Give myself something to so I'm just gonna, let's say we have to open it up a ½ inch. So it's gonna look like that. Okay, and then the other thing we're gonna do is we're gonna lift this up. Now I'm gonna show you something. I'm gonna line up the top of this pattern with this line on my cutting board. Okay, and I'm gonna make sure that's even, like this. So you can see that the line on my pattern is even with the bottom of my ruler. So you can see if I lift this up, I'm actually adding a little bit of length there. So you can see I've given myself more length, like that. So I'm going to go ahead and put a sticky note there as well. And I'll just cut off this because we don't need that. So I'll just swing this over here. So you can... All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue this up to here and this over here. So you can see I've added the height, which the amount of height I added is from here to here, right? And then I added the width from here to here. Okay, so you can see that I've opened up this whole internal part of the pattern to give more room on the side that's that needs to let the side seam relax towards the front. Okay, so it's bigger there, and the whole thing has kind of been pushed out like this. So up and out. Be interesting to show the reverse on the front. And then you can do these in either direction depending on what side is twisting. But on the front leg, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw the same guidelines in this direction, but instead of spreading, we're going to overlap. So in this case, I am going to create my pivots here and here. And I'm going to slash straight across, make a pivot, and I'm going to slash down here, and I'm going to make a pivot. And now we want to reduce the amount, so I'm going to go ahead and give myself a guideline here. Okay, and I'm doing a similar amount because if I pushed it this far in the back, I want to take it in that much in the front. So I'm literally going to just push this down like this and tape it into place. Okay, so here, let me just show you. This is overlapped, the same amount. So I've drawn in the side seam. So when we adjust this second slash line, we're not going to be overlapping it, right? Because if I overlap it, do the opposite, our side seams aren't going to match. So we have a twisting seam, but we have a higher hip. So I'm still going to be spreading over here. And I just want to make sure I add the same amount. So literally this amount right here that I added, this amount right here, is what I want to make sure I add there. So I'm going to go ahead and get my pink paper ready. Let's put it right there. Okay, so I'm going to lift that up so that I have the higher hip, and I want to make sure this measurement is the same as what I did in the back, because remember, the side seams have to stay together. So now this is going to prevent the twisting caused by the asymmetry of a curved spine that's causing the high hip. So again, I can finish this, put that back, okay, and then of course here now I'm going to have to redraw my front pocket too. So I put my front pocket back, and let me cut one out so I can show you. Okay, so let's just make sure these match. I'm gonna cut this off. So you see, now I can lay my side seams. And of course, whenever you're truing up a side seam, you always want to go from the knee down to make sure those match, and then from the knee up. So my knee is here, and then I'm literally just gonna use a little stiletto, oops, to pivot it. And we can see that I think I adjusted my front is a little bit higher than my back. So if it's not matching, you can go ahead and true those up. So this is really off. So let me just mark where it ends. Okay, so the front ended here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to split the difference. So I'm going to add half of that to the back, and I'm going to take half of it off of the front, because sometimes it's hard to tell when you're working on a diagonal what the actual change was. So in this case, because I've got this little bit, I'm going to find the middle, and I'm just going to add that little bit right there. Okay, and then on the opposite side, I'm going to take off that little bit. So I'm splitting what did not work in half, and I'll just do that. So then I'll cut this off, and I will cut this off up here. So there's our final answer. And there's our final. Okay. All right, so now we've got matching side seams. So you can see here, I overlapped to get rid of that, to draw the side seam in, and let's just remind ourselves what we were doing. So this fixes the left side, because if we look at what we're doing, the left leg needed more in the back, less in the front to straighten out our side seam. But if it's twisting in the same direction all the way around, you're going to do the exact opposite on the other side of your body. So notice on the right side, I have to actually let out the front and take in the back to get that to straighten out. So you would just do these adjustments on another set of legs, opposite direction. Once you do that, I would do it the same way. Now, if the other side doesn't have the higher hip, then you can actually just trim that back down if you don't need it. But depending on what your body's doing this adjustment for both sides, but opposite. So on our right side, we're going to push in the side seam, and we're going to let out in the front. Once you get the muslin on your body, you can then trim or fine-tune the fit of the waist at your side seam to accommodate what your hips are doing. So this is a way to reduce the twisting on garments for pants. And I think it's just important to realize, if you're twisting, it's not a simple thing to just raise or lower the higher hip like I did if you just have a high hip and a straight spine. So I hope that this will help you guys. I found this very interesting. I did work with someone many years ago who had scoliosis, and this is how we fixed her pattern. So I have tested this on one person, and of course on the high hip, when it's just either high on one side, this is very common. So I've been working with this. This works great. Adding to the fullness of the leg, it makes it easier if you're not redrawing your side seams. So I really hope that this little tutorial today helps you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow for subscriber Q&A. I am not 100% sure what my topic is going to be yet. I have a list of questions. I'm going to pick one, and I will see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, or Eastern Daylight Savings Time. And then Friday, yay, we're going to be working on the bias sew along. I have my pieces all cut out and ready to go to show you my first mock-up of my V-neck top, and I have the solution for adding ease at the hip. Because remember, if you followed along with me, I suggested measuring your widest part and then adding an inch to that measurement to give yourself some ease. I'm going to be amending those suggestions and also showing you what to do if you have like a 50-inch hip but only a 40-inch bust. I'm going to show you how to make ease at the hip on Friday. And I'm just going to tell you right out of the gate, I learned all of this fabulous bias information from Julie Ann, who wrote a beautiful book, and she is an amazing teacher, and I had so much fun, catching up with her at the ASG conference, and I picked her brain on different things for bias. So I will be sharing all sorts of bias stuff with you on Friday, so I'm so happy we'll be back together again. And as promised, I am not going anywhere on Fridays between now and the end of September, so we'll be able to meet every Friday for FabFic Friday for the next several weeks. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. Thank you guys for watching, and have a lovely rest of your day.